Oh, another Hunger Games film. This brings me back to 2010s. Did anyone else? It's just me. Or does anyone else have nostalgia on seeing the first Hunger Games film? Just that time when dystopian YA novels were just all the shiznit to make into a film, and now here we are with another Hunger Games film. What feels like very, very late in the lifetime of the Hunger Games trilogy or franchise or whatever you would call it. But I guess here we are. Anyway, here's my review of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And if you haven't seen the film, please don't watch this. There's spoilers. Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy written by Suzanne Collins. This book is also written by Suzanne Collins. It's all written by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel to the Hunger Games set 64 years before the first Hunger Games book and follows the story of Coriolanus Snow, otherwise who would later go on to be called President Snow, who we all know as the villain of the Hunger Games series. So obviously this book has an interesting outline as the film that shows us why Snow became the character that he is now. And I think in terms of that regard at least, showing how President Snow became the evil dude he is in the films, the film did a pretty great job, pretty bang up job. I enjoyed the acting of, and he played Snoke, and he did very good in his role, and he got along the whole how Snow went from like well, not entirely innocent, but like more innocent type of capital civilian to bloodthirsty, poisoning, tyrannical ruler very well. We also had Rachel Zegler as Lucy Greybeard in this film. She did a good performance. I'm not going to go into too much on that because if I say anything nice about Rachel Zegler, I get cancelled because obviously she is in hot water with pretty much the entire internet, given her what she said about the Snow White films. Yet they you probably don't go and see this movie if you don't like Rachel Zegler. I don't really care, to be honest. Stand-up performance though in this film has to be Viola Davis in the role of Dr. Ghoul, the evil scientist who's basically in charge of the Hunger Games, who creates all these mutts and things that we later, well, obviously become a staple of the games. These creatures that attack the tributes, kill them, blah blah blah. And also, she's the one who's in control of the games from the get go. She's the one with the most power, and obviously she is Snow's mentor. From what we see, she's the one that has the most effect on his life in this film, and she's by far the most evil character we've seen in the Hunger Games, willing to kill literally anyone to get what she wants, which is basically just to have the Hunger Games be as important as they can be. And Viola Davis obviously brings this out very well. I think Viola Davis was the perfect choice for this role. She just brings the crazy scientist part out of Doctor Ghoul very well, but also the human, I don't know how to put it, but human manipulative side of Doctor Ghoul out, which is, it's very hard to do, but she did a bang up job. We also have Peter Dinklage, obviously, as Casca Highbottom, who, with his performance, I can't tell if he's playing Casca Highbottom or Tyrion Lannister. At this point, whenever Peter Dinklage plays any character who gets drunk a lot, I just can't not see him as Tyrion Lannister, which is, I guess, my own fault, but his performance was pretty good. Given he wasn't in, he's only in a bit of the film. He's not a huge character, and the film is about 2.5 hours long. So, yeah, I don't imagine it was that problematic. He was that problematic because he wasn't in a lot of the film. The action scenes are also very good. It is substantially less of a brutal film, I'd say, than the previous Hunger Games films. Just given how they handle a lot of the child deaths in this film was very much off camera or just people getting poisoned, and obviously there weren't many dangerous creatures or big explosions that maimed kids. So yeah, there was less. I think it was less graphic in this film. It was more. This film was more of a psychological drama in many regards to how it handled snow. So it is less similar to the original Hunger Games films, as although they also have psychological parts, they are very much about um, war and propaganda and a range of different things, which is probably why they were liked so much, because young adults latch onto that. The other thing that the film just did really well was just set the environment of the capital. I absolutely loved the capital in this film. I didn't love how they kind of made the capital this old timey place, or like just the entire of Pan Am, like this old timey place. I mean this even now, even back then, Pan Am was still far ahead in science and all that. It's always has been. Pan Am has been a pretty futuristic place, even with how they treat the districts. So I was a bit taken aback by how far back they wanted to go with some of the looks of how Pan Am looked. It was a bit old timey and a bit. It did take you out of the series. I don't think it took you out of the series enough to make you think this isn't Hunger Games, but it definitely had an effect. But still, the world building and everything was done very well, and I enjoyed it. Sadly, though, this film does have a major problem, being that it is a pretty good adaptation of a book. But the book has a very, very, I'm just going to have to say it, poor third act. And sadly, the film suffers the same fate. I'm sure you've probably seen it somewhere else on the internet, but the third act of this film is just very boring, and very rushed. It is basically Snow finally becoming properly evil whilst being a peacekeeper, but it's very all over the place. I'm going to have to put it like that. It's the best. It's a very rushed between this happened, all over this short amount of time, and there's not a lot of build up to any of the events that happened, which is kind of sad because that was a really cool part in the end, but it didn't hit as hard because of the build up which wasn't there after the hunt. Because basically after the Hunger Games, it feels like a completely different film, and that's just an issue I think that I can't unsee. And it was the same with when I read the book, that it's just the final act just takes you out of the story entirely. I think the Hunger Games was the proper climax, and then you could have done another book about Snow and how he finally arose to power. But in the end, they didn't do that, and it was I wouldn't say it was brilliant. The last thing that took me out of the film a lot was just the amount of singing in this film. Like, I understand Lucy Gray-Besman would be a singer, but at many points it just felt like she was randomly singing for random reasons, and I was wondering if I was watching a Hunger Games film or West Side Story 2 Electric Boogaloo. So yeah, just there's just a lot of singing. Not fun. Anyway, the film overall was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was on the same level as the first two Hunger Games films, which I just think are a different level to most YA book adaptation films of the past 2 decades. So I wouldn't, but it's still nowhere near as bad as the Divergent films. So I would give it probably a good 7.5 out of 10. Given it did keep me being attentive for most of the film. I was paying attention for most of the film, and there were characters I actually did really like, and parts and a lot of the world building in this film was a lot better than a lot of world building in the Hunger Games. So that's also pretty good. But I don't suggest it being like this big thing that is not the big event that some of the Hunger Games films were. So yeah, that's my review anyway. See you in the next one.